Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Shooter, starring Mark Wahlberg, Michael Pena, Danny Glover, Ned Beatty, Kate Mara, Elias Koteas, Roni Mitra, Ray Sherbagia, forgive me if I said that wrong, and Mackenzie Gray, directed by Antoine Fuqua. Now, this movie I did go to theaters for those couple of decades ago, and what do I think of it? I don't remember. Let's see how this goes, and then we'll see if it's the same opinion as I remember, because I don't think I remember this movie being, well, you'll see what I mean. Sniper Bob Lee Swagger, played by Mark Wahlberg, waits for with his partner Donnie Fenn for a perfect shot at a war zone where I'm guessing is Ethiopia. Forgive me if I said that wrong, as it's never said, but unfortunately, Donnie gets killed and the United States government abandons the sniper all alone. The snipers, I'll say. And this opener shows proof of the government always abandoning all of their snipers, despite they have a theme called Never Leave a Man Behind. And guess what they did? And that kind of annoys me about this movie taking place in the government in general. 36 months later, Bob lives with his dog in a cabin in the middle of the mountains, while in Langley, Virginia, Colonel Isaac Johnson, played by Danny Glover, is hired to go to the mountains to make Bob do a job for the government once again, to shoot the president. While one of his men, Jack Payne, played by Elias Koteas, almost shoots Bob, while Bob is such a tough guy he would put him in the ground if he shot his dog, or touched it for that matter, and I can believe that from tough guy Mark Wahlberg, as he plays those types of characters pretty damn well. While not too surprisingly, Bob takes the job of assassinating the American president, as I believe later on it will be a setup. And come on, how many times have I seen this plot? As this can't be in any way original, as we get someone who worked in the army just to get set up by his own government and becomes a fugitive. As I can't believe this was something director Antoine Fuqua made up as a story, because it's completely unoriginal. Bob gets to Langley to reluctantly accept the job, as this is getting predictable to the point why the fuck am I predicting this movie? Because I've never seen this plot, but because I've seen this plot before in other movies. We meet Nick Memphis, who is a secret agent played by Michael Pena, as a Secret Service agent like I brought up, while Bob prepares to shoot the president until a wannabe cop shoots Bob and misses him, as the president has been shot by Bob's gun, and bumps into Nick and handcuffs him and tells him he's been set up by Colonel Johnson, and becomes the fugitive, as these characters are so dull to the point they're too boring to be around with, and this plot is predictable and quite a mess. Bob bleeds out while in Nick's car, and everybody is looking for him while he's driving like a fucking maniac, and drives backwards to the ledge of the water, and Bob finds his way to escape, which was too convenient, as this movie is making convenient choices right off the bat. Bob gets to land and steals a truck, which is again very convenient and bad choice, while Nick is in a meeting with his boss in the presence of, let me see if I'm saying this name right, Lourdes Galindo, something like that, played by Roni Mitra, about how he's lucky to be alive, and this is pretentious. While Bob is all over the TV, he turns off the power at a store and buys some stuff with cash and stitches himself, while I'm just getting bored, like mildly bored, but it's not as completely out of my mind. Bob drives to his partner's Donnie's wife's house in Kentucky, and who may be the third, and who might that be? A third grade school teacher, Sarah, played by Kate Mara, while Bob says he has nowhere to go, and she's stupid enough to call 911 in the first place and fake it as noise coming from a dog, as it scared the hell out of her. And why is this character so stupid? Like, her accent was just terrible. Bob heals himself on Sarah's bed. Heals himself, yeah, that's right. And setting up while Nick, learns the wannabe cop who shot Bob earlier in the movie is killed by Colonel Johnson, as he's the dumbest villain to ever fuck with a sniper to begin with. And while unconscious, Bob's dog gets killed off screen, and thank God for that, because I would have hated to see that in this scene in particular after I Am Legend. Same year, by the way, but it's just a few months difference. Bob wakes up as Sarah stitches him up and asks Sarah for a favor and brings up how Donnie's death was his fault, as this movie is kind of boring, cliche, and pretentious. And so, for that, doesn't make this a good movie, as it isn't so far. And Bob asks Sarah to wear a wig and tell him to get Nick to stop chasing him, as he didn't kill the president, and a couple of cops fight off to take Bob in with the German Shepherd dog. It beat the two cops up and locks one cop and the dog in the gate, while Nick looks up at Bob's innocence as he's going to get fired from his job, and this movie slows way the hell down at this point. Nick gets captured by the government and Bob saves his life, and Nick decides to help out Bob because he believes he didn't kill the president, and Nick drives to Bob in Tennessee to talk with Dave Simmons, played by Mackenzie Gray, in a small role explaining about how in Russia, who's a brutal son of a bitch someone is, which was a laughable line coming from Mackenzie Gray, while Nick calls a Lourdes about this person who happens to be in Virginia, while Colonel Johnson meets with Senator Charles F. Meekum, played by Ned Beatty, while working with him, and we get Jack kidnapping Sarah after killing one of the Colonel Johnson's men, and Bob and Nick are at a store shopping for some things and set up a trap while all this is completely laughable, in my opinion, Bob and Nick go on a mission to put some explosives in a cabin, and Bob bumps into a cripple whom I never got his name, and honestly, I don't really care at this point. The cripple man shoots himself and leads people to believe Bob shot him, in which he didn't, and Bob kills a couple of the Death Squad members and blow up the place, and shoot at a helicopter and blow it up with the huge-ass dynamite that's attached to the ground, while Colonel Johnson as well as Senator Meekum are furious with Bob, while Nick calls the FBI to not turn in Bob, while Bob gets a call from Colonel Johnson to negotiate a meeting on the mountains in the snow, as Bob disguises himself in the snow, where they'll save Sarah and kill Jack, and make a meeting with Senator Meekum, as well as Colonel Johnson in an office where he doesn't fire his gun at Colonel Johnson and shows he didn't kill the president, but unfortunately Colonel Johnson gets away scot-free and still wins the fight, and Bob isn't under arrest, and he goes out to a cabin where Senator Meekum and Colonel Johnson are at, and Bob's smoking cigars, and Bob attacks them to get even for the first setup Colonel Johnson has made in the first place. He gets them killed, and this climax was too stupid, and by the way, this movie was just uneven at the end of the day. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this movie a 3.7 out of 10. I can't believe director Antoine Fuqua made this up as a story when it's completely not original, because I've seen other movies where they do this plot, as it's very predictable, as these characters are dull as hell and they're too boring to connect with. And this is a messy and very disappointing film. Mark Wahlberg plays tough guys quite well, but doesn't pull it off here, as Kate Mara's character was too stupid with the accent and is just terrible, and Michael Pena's character was just pretentious, and Danny Glover's character was such a dumb villain, and there were times the movie bored me, but not to the point where it was out of my mind. But I was bored in this cliche of a story. I did not care for this movie, as it was boring, pretentious, and filled with hateful characters, and this is such a dumb, cliche, and predictable story, and I can't believe this movie was as bad as I thought it was back on the day, but revisiting it, unfortunately, makes me think this is not a good movie, this is a non-recommendation for this movie. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time we'll be back with Brooklyn's Finest, and until then, let's shoot some bastards.